Hello, it is an honor to be presenting at the OMNI. We are part of the PUENTE program and English 100 honors. We will be presenting cultural wealth. Our presenters include myself, Clarissa Trevino,
Evelyn Sanchez Garzon,
Javier Morales,
Pineda,
and Merilyn Navarro Sanchez.
Hello, I'm Dr. Violeta Sanchez, and I am faculty in the Letters Department, and I'm also a co-coordinator of the Puente program and English instructor. And so I'm here to support our wonderful Puentistas as they present their collective works in progress for their research assignment that they're working on in my class, in my English 100 class. And so just so to give you a little bit of context, they've asked me to share a little bit of the prompt. In this research assignment, they're using scholar Tara J. Yoso, her work on cultural capital, which is called Whose Culture Has Capital, a critical race theory discussion of community cultural wealth. They're using that as their framework, and they're going to research a form of cultural capital, or perhaps a couple, that they possess or that they want to possess or develop, and explain how that form of cultural capital or those forms of cultural capital can contribute positively to their pursuit of higher education. And so I'm going to give way for the Puentistas to present their work.
To start off, we will be answering the question, what is cultural wealth? Cultural wealth is the cultural assets accumulated and possessed by minority populations, acquired by the cultural experiences and social interactions that relates to their background. Cultural wealth is entailed by linguistic, social, existent, familial, aspirational, and navigational capital.
To tap into the first cultural wealth that we presented, I'll be guiding you through linguistic capital. So linguistic capital, as Yoso's definition, is inclusive to intellectual and social skills attained through communication experiences in more than one language and or style. My personal definition refers to social abilities drawn for communication background that develop from the communal or familial root, whether it be from a need to translate or inherited traditions related to storytelling. Linguistic capital develops as a sense of maturity and responsibility from interacting with society and our community. So the thesis statement that was developed through the research is that linguistic capital, through its extension, bilingualism, and the communication that the experiences that it entails, develops the social maturity needed to succeed in higher education due to the sense of purpose and commitment towards social justice that me and others possess. So linguistic capital is the language it is learned through a cultural setting. Bilingualism gives the perspective of two cultural settings and ideologies. So in my background would be Spanish and English. It is acquired to ideologies throughout the language. So the ideologies that Spanish language possess, and such that Mexico through Spanish possess, and the ideologies that English throughout America possesses. So in the Latino culture, machismo is a part of language experiences, the communication that has an ideology value that values women and makes women question. So for instance, what I've heard and what I've experienced myself is the labels that define women into señorita and doña. So it is basing their values in our sexuality or what we are as in a certain way, an object. So this distorting of their creative and intellectual identity serves as a pathway to make us female college students to attain higher education and to break through those injustices that us themselves, women, are affected by. So bilingualism as the extension of communication experiences, bilingualism promotes the feelings of empathy, that understanding the more deeply towards both cultures, Spanish and English, it gives us the experience that surrounds them from. So bilingualism promotes a more critical insight about our social issues, and the ones that we experience in both English and Spanish would lead to the sense of social responsibility. Bilingualism connects with a broader community of people from different cultures and linguistic backgrounds. It makes us more aware of the injustices in life through comparison with other cultures and gives us a sense of purpose throughout this resilience. So for myself, it is through this social injustices that I'm pursuing a STEM period, cognitive science, to break that oppression that we are not represented in it.
I'll be presenting social capital. So first, I'll be discussing what is social capital. According to Yoso, social capital can be understood as networks of people and community resources. In more simplistic terms, it's one's way to build connections with peers and higher ups to gain support through and for a system, the system being today college. After going over the definition of what social capital is, I'll be answering the question of how will it lead to my success? By obtaining the skill of social capital, it will allow me as a college student to receive guidance and support throughout my college career that will allow myself to acquire motivation, knowledge, connections, which are essential for me as a college student, for their success in higher education. Although socializing and forming groups with peers is a key aspect of social capital, students who want to succeed in college must pay attention to whom they are surrounding themselves with, because it can influence who they are and who they could possibly become. As the year progressed, she formed new social groups and avoided her roommate, who focused more on partying and less on studying. As the quote above demonstrates, choosing the wrong circle can hinder your chances for success because it can distract you from accomplishing your goals. When collaborating with ambitious individuals, one may feel a new sense of motivation through that group environment, which allows them to stay on track with their goals. Some ways I am setting up this environment is by partaking in academic organizations or groups such as Puente, the student ambassadors, and this honors group.
Hello, my name is Merilyn, and I will be presenting on resistant capital. So my thesis statement is resistant capitals makes us challenge our views and consider what can be done differently to better our chances as college students. So Yoso's definition refers to knowledges and skills referred through oppositional behavior that challenges inequality. My definition is what you have learned from being put into difficult situations because of your identity or cultural background. So I will be talking about the Chicano movement, also known as El Movimiento. The Chicano movement is a social and political movement that was started to bring awareness to the mistreatment of Mexicans in the US. An example of the mistreatment that occurred before the start of the Chicano movement would be the 1947 Mendez versus Westminster case. In 1944, Sylvia Mendez's family tried enrolling her and her brother to Westminster Elementary, but were told to enroll in a Mexican-American school because of their darker skin and Hispanic last name. The schools themselves didn't teach the students proper education, but instead how to be maids and knit. The Equal Protection Clause was called upon and the court ruled in favor of the Mendez family. Now, during the Chicano movement, which started in the 1960s, the most notable example would be the National Farm Workers Association, later known as the United Farm Workers, which was founded by Cesar Chavez and co-founded by Dolores Huerta. The main goal was for farm workers to get better pay and safer working conditions. During this time, Huerta coined the saying, "Si se puede." One of the key legacies of the Chicano movement was that it brought the country's attention to the presence of the Mexican-American population. Now this ties into the resistant capital because the main goal of the capital is to take action for inequality that has occurred within communities, which is what the Chicano movement is about.
Hi, I'm Javier, and I'll be talking about familial capital. Yoso's definition of familial capital is familial capital refers to those cultural knowledges nurtured among familia, kin, that carry a sense of community, history, memory, and cultural intuition. My definition would be the cultural knowledge one gets from their family and uses it to help them succeed either in school, college, everyday life, or to help out in their community. So the thesis statement for familial capital that I wrote was, familial capital is a part of a person's being and it is used to help them in life and in school. In my research, I found this quote, and it says, Ramos studied the institutional representation of families of color in the collegiate experiences of students and found that families are often represented in one of three ways: the ever-absent family, as both absent and lacking college knowledge; the malleable family, as involved within the guidelines set by an institution; and the cornerstone family, which is inclusive of diverse ways in which families are engaged in a student's collegiate experience. Families have a major impact on students' work ethic and mentality when it comes to education. First-generation Latinx students tend to lack the information they need in order to have a less complicated experience while they are in college. Their families won't have any personal experience of being in college, nor what it will feel like. The knowledge Latinx students may receive from their family is how to survive in society and not how to work the school system. However, what they learn from their family can help them in succeeding in college and give them a unique perspective of what they can learn in classes and in school.
Hi, my name is Clarissa Trevino, and I will be presenting aspirational capital. Yosel defines aspirational capital as the ability to maintain hopes and dreams for the future, even in the face of real and perceived barriers. My definition of aspirational capital is having the determination and resilience to continue working towards your goal even when you fail. Next slide, please. Based on the definitions of aspirational capital, students need to develop and build on their determination and resilience in the face of difficulty in order to be successful in achieving their goals. Next slide, please. I've done research on two sources, one of them being the community culture, wealth, and assets-based approach to persistence of engineering students of color. One Latina college student explains that it might be tough for 4 years, but in the long run, I'll be a lot better off. This shows aspirational capital because this college student has and is using her determination to persevere in the difficult college classes for a better future. The next source I have is from the Pedagogues of Survival for Mexican American students have learned to view struggle as necessary to achieve success in life. A quote I pulled from here is Mexican American students have learned to view struggle as necessary to achieve success in life. This shows aspirational capital because these Mexican American college students have already built the determination and resilience to achieve their success. And these students have learned early on that the reward is greater than the barrier in front of them. Therefore, they continue to face these struggles even when they fail. And by not giving up, they build their resilience to future barriers and prove their determination to succeed. An example that I have in my personal life is my journey through my math courses. So in class, when I do not understand a concept, I make sure that I ask questions and attend tutoring. My determination to become an engineer outweighs my nervousness to attend class. And this shows resilience because I have the courage and willingness to go back to class and participate even when I'm too nervous to. Next slide, please.
So navigational capital will be entailed by us puentistas and will be wrapped in our experiences as we collectively experience it not only through Puente, but through ourselves.
So what is navigational capital? He also defines it as maneuvering through social institutions. The ability to move on institutions that is not meant for people of color. It may be stated that resilience as a form of resistance leads to the attainment of navigational capital. For instance, college. We have to adapt to a new environment and work our way through an institution that wasn't meant for people of color. For many, it's a shocker that we have made it this far in our education. We will continue with our intelligence and break the status quo along the way.
After learning the definition of navigational capital, I'm going to be discussing the thesis statement. Navigational capital uplifts college students through the cultural heritage that they have possessed previously. This background leads to resilience and supports their success through achieving higher education.
So, as mentioned beforehand, there's the resilience. In a sense, it is a paradox of why gone through difficult situations, Mexican Americans yet prevail. So as mentioned by Rendon, it is people like Mexican American Community College students fare extremely difficult situations and yet prevail. So there is this base towards how resilience is made. It is through the personal factors and environmental factors that are set through our cultural background. So social competence, good problem-solving skills, a strong sense of autonomy, and a sense of purpose that are based on our background is what makes the first base for resilience. And also there's environmental factors, as mentioned beforehand, in familial capital, in school, and communities that help us transcend obstacles. So that it would be for us being Mexican American, Latino, Chicano descent, it would be our familia, our communities, and how they're built into making us being resilient to be navigating this social institutions that are not meant for ourselves, yet we do succeed. Next slide, please.
So we read the book, A Dream Called Home by Reina Grande, and we noticed that throughout the memoir, there were a lot of capitals that we saw. And so, and Reina Grande, through A Dream Called Home, recalls the story of a starting college student, of a graduate woman, of a teacher, and later of a mother and writer who wavers through her life in attaining her place to call home through many systematic and personal difficulties. Grande carries through her life the weight of being a first-generation college student, an immigrant, and also the agonies that drag her from her childhood and familial trauma. Next slide, please.
One of the capitals that was detected in A Dream Called Home, it is linguistic capital. Reina Grande is part of the Latino community, has the background in both Spanish and English. So in herself, when coming to the United States, she finds a collision of two identities, a new language that she did not know and finally knew in college, Spanglish. Assessed and determined by her mentor, Marta, she determines that to be ashamed of how you speak is to be ashamed of where you're from. So Spanglish provides a wider perspective in culture. This leads not only to the connection of various parts of the community, but also to a greater understanding to their ideologies. This understanding causes a social maturity that Joseph discusses in a sense of responsibility that one has towards giving back. In the sense of Reina Grande, it is her responsibility to give the voices to those who are like herself, who experienced being the first generation immigrants that did not have the ability to help, and that represents us. So we finally understand how linguistic capital applies to ourselves. We understand that we have those two experiences and that they connect to each other and build upon what we are. We are Spanglish, we're Latinos, and we struggle, but we can succeed through acknowledging that we are not alone. Next slide, please.
In A Dream Called Home, I noticed that there are lots of patterns of aspirational capital. It focuses a lot on determination and resilience, which in my opinion, A Dream Called Home makes the perfect example of aspirational capital. Before I head into this quote, I would like to give you some background information. Reina Grande's father had dreamt of his children pursuing a higher education after immigrating to the US. Although her older siblings did pursue a higher education, unfortunately, they were not able to complete it. So when Reina Grande transferred to UC Santa Cruz, her father gave up on his dream, and in doing so, gave up on her. Grande says, though I vowed not to do the same, he no longer believed in the dream and had given up on me before I even got my chance. I was determined to prove him wrong, to prove to him that he had been wrong about me. This shows aspirational capital because she is determined to pursue a higher education and prove her father wrong. This also shows resilience because when faced with someone telling her not to pursue her dream, she goes and pursues it anyways. And based on a dream called home, I believe Reina Grande defines aspirational capital as believing in your dream even when no one else believes in them.
After reading A Dream Called Home, I was able to connect social capital to Reina Grande's story. In the memoir, Reina Grande elaborated on several mentors she was able to obtain, one of which was her community college English professor, Diana. Although no longer being her student, Reina Grande still was able to keep contact with her. The context that I'm gonna give y'all before I present the quote is that Reina Grande is stuck in a rut as to what she wants to do with her career and how she can expand it. And then Diana comes in and saves her by giving her information. Following Diana's advice, I looked up into accelerated teacher credentialing programs. After forming this connection with her professor, Grande's academic success only continues to grow due to Diana's mentorship. Just like Grande's, students should form connections with their professors so they can build on this academic support, guidance, and inherit their knowledge. These forms of networking are things that I'm currently working on by connecting with professors and by being an active participant in their class.
After reading A Dream Called Home, I saw that there was a lot of familial capital in the memoir. And so I saw that Grande talks a lot about how when her father brought her and her siblings to the US, he would always tell them that their only job was getting a good education. Higher education is the only way to succeed in this country. My father had drilled that into us the minute we had arrived in Los Angeles after our third attempt at crossing the border. One of the things Grande learned from her father was how important education was and still is to this day. It was a part of those familial values that as a capital made her pursue a higher education.
One way that us as students were able to obtain more capital was through our service learning activities. One in particular for 3 of the people presenting in this group was through the Dia de los Muertos activities. Next slide, please. I was able to obtain social capital through the baking of the pan de muerto with my profe. As you can see by the photos that were previously presented, my bread didn't come out so good. It was flat and it didn't have that much growth. But unlike the bread, our relationship did grow. Through this connection, I was able to gain an understanding that Dr. Sanchez will support me throughout my academic journey. Not only that, I was able to gain a new mentor, whether it be baking or academic.
One way that I have grown in my aspirational capital was attending a flower making workshop for Dia de los Muertos. In this workshop, we were tasked to make paper marigolds for the library altar. I was determined to help my community, so when I tore my first few flowers or missteps in making the flowers, I felt discouraged. But despite feeling discouraged, I stayed with the workshop and continued to practice. And through many tries, I was able to make the beautiful flowers and donate them to my community. This shows aspirational capital because despite my initial struggles, I had the resilience to keep trying, and my outcome outweighed the barrier faced in front of me.
So for familial capital for me, I also attended the flower making workshop for Dia de los Muertos, and I also helped with building the altars for Dia de los Muertos at the Maricosta Library. And it's a part of familial culture because even though in my family we don't celebrate Dia de los Muertos, it became a new tradition for us to help represent and to remember our loved ones who have passed on and to carry their memories. And it also is navigational because we can help our community create the resilience to maneuver in the social institutions that are not in our favors. Next slide, please.
So for the final part of the service learning, the two lasting capitals will be in the Social Justice Committee. Starting with linguistic capital, as member of the Chicanx Latinx La Cultura series, it has helped me being bilingual for participating in events in Spanish speakers. But not only that, but I'm provided with a previous insight from my culture that helped me to determine what I should make events about and deconstruct our ideologies. So in a sense, creating events as Ser Mujer Indígena en la Contemporaneidad, it makes us aware previously. We know what we want to present and what we want to make people more aware of, which leads me not only to become a member, but to advocate and try to become the leader that I want from my community.
So I attended the Being an Indigenous Woman in Contemporary Times presentation. And from the presentation, I gained a stronger understanding of Indigenous people being looked at differently because of the way they express their culture and identity. Cultural knowledge ties into resistance capital because lessons and traditions being taught by the very own compact, oppressive structures.
So these are the photos from me and Merilyn being presented in the Ser Mujer Indígena en la Contemporaneidad and the proof for the attendance. So it is part of our resistance and part of our linguistic in attending. So.
To end off, we will be connecting Puente and the cultural capitals. As an extension of resistant capital, we have the creation of programs like Puente, whose sole purpose is to help Latinx students to navigate through college to successfully transfer. It is community-based because it is run by Puente professors and Puente students. It expands on social capital by exposing Puente students to professionals who then present who they are, what they do, and why they're important. They also give time for the Puentistas to ask questions and to ask for possible mentorship. It embraces linguistic heritage by incorporating English and Spanish into the lessons, and it makes students aspire for more by bringing in past Puentistas who have successfully transferred. In our Puente counseling class, we discuss resistance to dominant culture. In this class, we have our Raza icon, who we have to do research on local Mexican Americans and present them to the class and why they're important to us. And it also embraces familial capital by providing safe spaces to practice and apply our culture, to apply our cultural knowledge. Next slide, please. Here we have our references. So if you want to find out more, we have them here. Thank you for your time, and we hope you learned something from our presentation. Thank you.